Welcome to the Margin Line podcast. I'm Joe Lynch, head of go-to-market at Dandy. This show is all about peeling back the layers of how technology is revolutionizing dentistry, especially in partnership with DSOs and ambitious private practices. We want to give you the inside scoop of what actually goes on in the lab, the challenges we face, the advances we're making, and the stories from the front lines that matter most to doctors and patients. Apex Dental Partners started with a simple but radical belief. Dentists don't have to choose between going it alone and fitting it into a branded cookie-cutter practice model. David and Dr. Layla Lohmann have spent the last decade proving it, growing to 65 practices, making the Inc. 5000 list 6 years in a row, and building a doctor leadership development engine that generated $1.6 million in production growth for its first doctor cohort alone. This is their playbook. Layla, welcome. David, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
You founded Apex in 2014, and it started actually with your own experience as a patient, being diagnosed with a condition at 12 that affected you for almost 20 years. It's central to why you built Apex, but really take us back. How did that experience shape your philosophy and how you've built the brand today?
Well, to be honest, it's why I got into dentistry more, of living with thyroid eye disease versus being co-founder with Apex Dental Partners. But it aligns with the mission of we wouldn't have this unless I was a dentist.
Yeah.
So living with thyroid eye disease and Graves' disease, you don't know that the autoimmune condition can affect enamel. And I was in the dentist chair all the time. And I had my first crown at 12.
Wow.
And my teeth were brittle, hindsight. I know the science behind it now, so I didn't understand it then, but I probably got 6 crowns before the age of 20. And my dentist never made me feel bad. I was somewhat bullied in 8th grade due to eye condition, and it just made me feel really good. He never made me feel like I was awful at cleaning my teeth.
Yeah.
And so I knew if I could make someone feel just as comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, like that's what I wanted to do with my life. So that's what made me decide to become a dentist.
Wow.
And it was really, again, I was going to be a teacher, first grade teacher for life. And then that happened. And now I get to be doing the teaching as well as the dentistry. And I love the advocacy part of it because as a patient, you really can empathize with patients and it really connects with them.
So you become a dentist. It's funny that most patient experience is to do anything to avoid the dental chair. Here it sounded like a safe haven for you. So you go to dental school and you graduate. Then what?
I started working at a large branded employment-based corporate dentistry, and I enjoyed it. I looked for a private practice. Every time you graduate dental school, they tell you, find a mentor, stay with private practice, the world's dying is what they tell you. Just kidding. But it did. I mean, they basically, all of our teachers said, if you went with a DSO, you're selling out. And no one would give me a job. They wanted 2 years of experience. And as I was interviewing, I said, well, how do I get 2 years of experience if no one gives me a job?
Right.
So went with a job. I had a great experience. I didn't know what I didn't know about the pay scale and HMOs and capitation plans. I was with David. I've been with David since I was 19. So, we didn't know what we didn't know back then. But I realized everyone was getting paid a little bit more than me. And I also didn't necessarily have the autonomy to, if I didn't have a patient to go run an errand, it was very much like you had to work and you couldn't do anything else.
I think a big driver, if you look back, was less candidly about some of those things. And pretty early on, you knew that patient model wasn't what you had envisioned your career.
That's true.
I think, if you think about what you love about dentistry, and it's been a pretty central part to what we have built Apex around, it was really around that relationship.
Right. I couldn't form.
You came up through college interning for a dentist.
Right.
Small, 4-op practice, name on the door, team, long tenured patient base. It was relationship oriented. And you stepped out into a world where the patient acquisition model just was different. It was more volume-based than relationship-based. And I think you struggled with that early on of, this isn't what I wanted out of my career when I decided to become a dentist. Again, going back to kind of your origin story. But ultimately, that was a big impetus on why we founded Apex. It was to create that solution for dentists like Layla originally. And we wanted, as you said in your lead in, we rejected the idea that you had to either choose between a private practice and taking all that burden upon yourself,
Yep.
or fitting into a model that in which Layla found herself in the first few years that just didn't fit what she specifically was looking for in her career.
And I'm curious if there was a specific moment in your early career where you recognized that insight. Like what was the action or activity that really led
You
you
would
to say
have
it?
seen it more than I did because I like people, so I don't ever see bad in things.
You know, I saw it. So I was working in finance at the time. I'd see it from her coming home of this wasn't it. Again, she, I think, fully transparent of had a really good experience overall,
Yeah.
learned a lot, you know, had some really great mentors there. And it wasn't that it was a bad experience. It wasn't what she wanted long term.
Right.
At the same time, you were active in organized dentistry. We were going to these events. We'd sit at a table with a cohort of older doctors later in their career that were talking about, I'm on my second or third associate and they keep leaving. I don't know what my retirement plan is. Sitting here going, well, gosh, that's not what she wants either, but there's got to be something here. And we really, I mean, the impetus for building Apex, ourselves together, our co-founder, Matt Hale, it was to give that high quality private practice a place in the future, something that looked and felt like private practice, both for doctors and their teams, but especially for patients, all kind of surrounded by the resources of a larger organization. And so it really did come out of those. There's a demand here from both sides of the generation gap in this industry, and there weren't a ton of groups that were addressing that need at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So you have the core insight. Walk me through how you start to partner with your first practice and where you go from there.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
think it was the hard one.
We're all 28, 29 years old at the time. We've decided we're going to do this. You're approaching doctors who have spent their entire careers building this practice that they care deeply about. And your track record is, trust me, we can figure it out. And so, look, that was the biggest hurdle early on. It was ultimately finding an opportunity to, you know, we were a DSO before we had a practice to support. And, you know, ultimately we partnered with a practice that, unfortunate circumstance, the doctor had passed away suddenly. It was in Dallas. It was right where we were, you know, wanting to be. Layla was available and able to step in. And so this doctor passed away. Layla stepped in 2 months later and took over this practice. And it's still the patient base she serves today.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it certainly isn't our model. It wasn't what we were looking for. But look, we had to find an opportunity that allowed us to get into business, and it did. And that second and third and fourth practices, it was just a little bit easier when you could say, look, we're doing it.
Yeah, walk me through the pitch.
Yeah, it was, look, early on, this was purely a retirement transition solution for most of these doctors. I think if we're being honest, most of them probably went, look, I've got a 2-year work back commitment. I can do anything for 2 years. So even if these guys screw it up,
I'm good.
It'll be fine. I'm going to retire either way.
Yeah.
And the irony is that
they're the longest ones who stayed.
I mean, those doctors were with us 2 of the first 3 have now retired. The third is still with us. He was very much committed to, I'm going to be here for 2 years and then I'm retiring. We're 11 years later, and he's still one of our biggest supporters, biggest advocates, has been a great partner. But all of those relationships lasted for 8 and 10 years. And it proved out, I think, that, look, there is a model out there to which we can put you in a position that actually extends the timeline in which you can envision doing what you love. I think when it's all on you, you go, look, 60 is a pretty good day to retire if you know, if it's all me. And all of these guys worked into their 70s and 80s.
Yeah, late.
Because it brought the joy back, I think, candidly, to what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so help me understand. So doctors are getting ready to retire, 2-year work back. They're now staying for 10, 12 years. Help me understand, like, what are the things that you're peeling back from the doctor owner responsibilities and integrating into the Apex playbook?
It varies by doctor. Well, I guess the value proposition varies by doctor, I would say. And look, the industry's evolved a lot. 10, 15 years ago, this model was largely a retirement transition solution. You know, over the last 11 years, we've affiliated practices with doctor owners in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, at kind of all points in their career. And each of them have a pain point that they're looking to solve through partnership.
Mhm.
So for some, that is, I guess to answer your question directly, our model is that we look to take everything non-clinical off of your plate. It's not that it comes out of the practice, but it's no longer the burden of the doctor. You finish up that last crown, you're exhausted at 4:30, 5
Yeah.
o'clock. It's Thursday, and as the owner, you get to do it all again tomorrow, but it's payroll and AP and
Yeah.
running collections. It's all the burdens of small business ownership. And so a lot of what we do is, look, we've built out a team now, especially at scale, that we can devote experts to each kind of aspect of this, where as a private practice owner, you're wearing every hat. You talking about before we started this, that marketing's changing quickly. I mean, think about if that's your fourth job, throughout your day, to think about marketing your practice. Truly, when we started, some of those early practices, when they started their career 30 years earlier, it was illegal to market your practice in the state of Texas. They regulated the size of the sign that could be on your door. It couldn't be more than 6-inch letters. And all of a sudden, they're entering a world where if you don't have a dynamic website and SEO expertise and some of these things, you're falling behind.
Right.
And so, for us, we focus our efforts on, let us take the administrative burden off. Let us surround you with experts who, keep up with this stuff day to day, and truly get back to spending the overwhelming majority of your time, back to where we begin this story, of building patient relationships and ultimately providing that high quality care. And look, I think it resonates really well with doctors who find value in our model.
Right.
People who are looking for that practice that they want to feel like it's their own. They want their patients to feel like it's their own. They want to have a seat at the table in decision making. But ultimately, what they love about dentistry is that relationship orientation.
Well, they get to do it without being alone. I mean, solo is really,
It's hard.
everybody's looking for a partner in personal life.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want one in business life to help support you on those tough times? And when you're in the doctor position, you can't really go talk to your DA about doctor problems, and you can't really talk to your OBM about problems because everyone sees what's coming in, and then they get upset about whatever, right? But they're not talking about overhead and how much it costs to keep the lights on, and they don't recognize how much effort it takes to be able to give people jobs.
Yeah, to run the SMB, the small business that it is.
Right.
Yep.
So you let the practice, you acquire a practice, you let the practice, and central to, I think, to the Apex model is you let the practice keep its name, its team, its identity, and then you start and you allow full clinical control. Apex handles everything else. Post-acquisition, though, can you walk me through some of the wins and how you think about implementation and integration inside the broader Apex umbrella?
I think any person who has gone through trying to build or scale a DSO, this will resonate with them. Early on, you think, look, we can build a group, but we're not going to change anything, doctor. And those are probably, in hindsight, the worst words you will ever utter as a group. You think that. The problem with that is it's not scalable.
Mhm.
And so really what looks, to be honest, that's evolved for us over time. We thought, no, we'll let you keep your your own practice management system and your own phone system and your own this. And you realize over time that, look, not only is that not scalable, we can't truly drive value for you. We don't have access to the data. We don't have access to the insights. We can't do what you really want us to do without some standardization.
Right.
And so I would say there is a lot of standardization across the business functions of our practices. But what I think resonates most or matters most to a dentist is that treatment autonomy, that clinical autonomy. Look, when I read an x-ray, this is my treatment philosophy. This is my diagnosis. And I can tell you without exception across the history of our company, we just steer clear of that. We spend our time far more focused on, if we find the right people, if we partner with the right doctors who share our philosophy that, look, the patient comes first, we're going to do it in an ethical way, that we are able to leave that entirely to them. And it allows us to be much more standardized on the functions that either are non-patient facing, non-clinical in nature. And amazingly, I think what a lot of teams find a ton of value in is the structure.
Yeah.
Right? In a solo practice, solo owner, the structure is whatever the owner decides it is that day.
Yep.
And if you're an employee, a dental assistant, a front desk who this is my livelihood. I have bills to pay. I've got a mortgage to pay. And the whipsaw of just kind of not knowing what's next is, I think that's a lot of stress to put on somebody. And so I think that when somebody learns their practice is joining Apex, a DSO in their mind, and look, we're not as large as some, but we're no longer, small,
Yeah.
that there's fear in that. But I think if you talk to a lot of those teammates 30, 60, 90 days post-affiliation, getting back to your question, I think the comfort in the structure is really exciting for them. I think they understand expectations. They understand what a future can look like. There's career pathways for them. There's growth opportunities, all of which are limited in the four walls of a solo practice.
Well, and I think people fear the uncertainty
For sure.
of it. And people don't really like structure, but they need it to not feel anxious.
Sure.
And so I was resistant to the structure originally because I thought the same thing. I was like, I want the support, but I also want it my way. And so traditionally, that's kind of how most of our doctors, well, I wouldn't say most, but me, that now what I see is the structure actually helps me retain team, have that ability to take uncertainty away because we know the structure, we know what we're going to be doing, and it does not affect patient care. It affects the outstanding patient experience from the start to finish, but not the clinical autonomy for the team.
And you've both said clinical autonomy, clinical freedom is paramount. Dentistry must remain clinician-led.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
As a clinician, how do you balance the tension between clinical freedom and, frankly, the reality of investor returns?
Well,
Yeah, I think, so I mentioned my partner, my co-founder, Matt Hale. We both come from the finance world. We worked in private equity before founding Apex. I think we came in with an awareness of what taking investor money means.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you take investor money, there is an expectation of return.
Sure.
More importantly, what that's allowed us to do is manage those relationships and set expectations very carefully. When we founded the business, we raised a small amount of money from individuals and kind of family offices. We didn't take any institutional capital, and that was very intentional. Institutional capital typically has a more finite timeline in which they're looking for that return, which is totally fair. It just didn't align with the business we were looking to build and the timeline in which we wanted to prove out the concept.
Mm-hmm.
6 years in, we brought on what is now our majority investor, which is a private equity fund. And we were very thoughtful through that process. We wanted a partner who worked with a lot of founder-run businesses, who could take a longer-term horizon. Now, you go through that process, you're trusting that what they say is who they're going to be. And I can't say enough good things about our sponsor. They've been incredibly supportive. They've been in the business for 5 years now, which, if we're being honest, have been a tough 5 years in dentistry. They've been great for us and really strong, but it's not been a perfectly smooth ride. I mean, you're coming off COVID, you have wage inflation, you got staffing shortages, and every step of the way, they've really supported our long-term vision. Some of the investments we make will not have a return this quarter or this year, or maybe even next year, but they're investments that we feel strongly will pay off long-term. It's what leads to doctor retention. Doctor retention is the name of the game in dentistry, especially in our model where those patients care about that doctor relationship. And so, look, I think it's a really good question. It's just something that we've never found as kind of at a true crossroads for us. I think it's something we've been conscious of, but importantly, it'll be something we have to remain conscious of as we continue to grow and bring on, new investors or more investors in the future.
I'll say from the clinical standpoint, you wouldn't even be able to tell we got PE money from there. It's a testament to the leadership of they know to not touch that long-term patient relationship. And that is important for that doctor and that team. And I mean, we live together.
Yeah.
And he knows that if it ever touched anything that I felt was not necessarily pertinent to the business, that it wouldn't be their choice. It's the clinical aspect. But I will say that once I learned how to be okay with having a profitable, healthy business and not feel unethical about it, because that's what they taught you in dental school. They taught you business was separate. You are a healthcare provider. Well, they said you're a dentist, restorative dentist. And over the last few years, when I started realizing like my team wants raises. You're talking about inflation. You're talking about all these things that we need to be offsetting. Well, when patients accept the care you prescribe, you ultimately have better oral health outcomes and practice growth, which means profitability to reinvest in your practices. And so if doctors are always doing the right thing and treatment planning and patients are accepting the care, you ultimately have a really healthy, profitable business. So they've never really had to touch it.
Yeah. And you talked, both of you, I think, are converging on this idea that to have a healthy business means you will create long-term staff retention, in particular around doctors. And if you retain doctors who build relationships with a patient base over time, you'll end up with better oral health and hygiene.
Right.
And I'm curious, what is the core lever behind driving doctor retention? Like, it seems that is the name of the game, and we hear it from our other customers and DSOs that we speak with as well. What is the core thesis for Apex's doctor retention?
So back to your, why do we stay hands-off clinically? I think there's two things. One, it is the absolute right thing to do when you're a non-clinician. There's an added business benefit of it, is that good doctors want that clinical autonomy.
Yep.
And so it's been very, it's been a pillar to kind of who we are, our central thesis and culture from the beginning. And part of that is, look, we get doctor applications all the time of doctors that are looking to leave an opportunity that otherwise they're happy of. But look, I went to an AGD or GPR residency and I've got this expanded skill set, but it's being recommended that I refer those procedures to a specialist instead of doing it. Or the opposite, I'm being asked to do all of it. And that's not either where I'm comfortable or confident. And again, it's not a knock on those models. It's just, you end up losing great people when you restrict their clinical autonomy.
Right.
And so I think it starts with that. I think the other thing is doctors want a seat at the table. I've used that phrase here, but they want a voice in how their practice operates. We have done a lot of evolving over time and really push that decision-making as close to the patient as possible. Yes, I feel like I have a pulse on our practices, but I'm not in those practices each and every day. I'm not the one that's deciding what staffing challenges need to be addressed at the practice, or where a certain investment needs to be made in that individual practice. A doctor and an office manager are much closer to that decision, and when we can empower them with education, understanding the business of dentistry, development from a leadership perspective, education on how to think about a P&L, how to read a P&L. You're giving them these guardrails to understand what good business decisions can be made. And I will tell you that almost without exception, when given the information, doctors make really good business decisions.
Yeah.
They really do. I know there's this narrative out there that that's not the strength, but I think some of it is, it's not where they focus their time or have the time to focus.
Or fear it.
It may not be where they've been educated in the past, but we've done a lot of development around that. We share a lot of data with our doctors, both clinical data, financial data. We want to give them the tools to make good decisions. And we really trust that ultimately, whether it's a decision we would have made or not in some circumstances, we trust that it was what they determined was best for the patient.
With the right assumption.
And that's really with the right data. And that's been really impactful for doctors, I think, feeling that ownership mentality in their practice.
Yeah, they're empowered.
So education, it drives doctor retention. Doctors are busy. And let's talk about Apex Catalyst. Right? It's a 9-month program. 7-month program.
Just because some people don't want 9 months program, it's a long time.
But it's a ton of time investment. So you're talking about giving doctors more information, which takes time to digest on top of an already busy schedule. Can you walk me through the catalyst, behind Catalyst?
Yeah, I was going to say, it started with my own journey. I had been practicing for 13 years at the time, almost 13 years. And I was tired of the patient frustrations. I was tired of the team members complaining. Honestly, I was trying to actually figure out how to get out of dentistry, but stay in dentistry within our business. And Dr. emailed me, Guiding Leaders, a Glidewell development program. It was specifically for women back then. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm a bad leader. Emailed me, Guiding Leaders, a Glidewell development program. It was specifically for women back then. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm a bad leader. And that's not what he thought at all. Now that I've told the story many times, he actually said it was only for females or I would have done it.
Yeah.
And at that time, that is a 6-month program that I had to go to California, but you didn't have to pay for the CE.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to him and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this program. And he's like very much Team Lohmann all the time. So he's like, why? And tell me, because it takes away clinical.
Sure.
It takes away, I think our kids were 4 and
8 maybe.
8 at the time.
Yeah.
And it was 6 weekends away and you leave on a Wednesday and you come back on a Sunday. And he's like, if you want to do it, like do it, but do it for you. And I was like, I want to do it. But in my head, I was like, how do I get out of all this frustrating? And I think I was on the verge of burnout. I think 10 to 15 years is when people have that little bit of burnout feeling. You're doing the same thing. And I had like this aha moment in the 4th session. There was inward and outward mindset. There was a very little clinical, but there was clinical. There was communication immersions workshop. There was DISC assessment for communication. And it was curated in a way that helped me bring awareness that I was actually the roadblock to my burnout.
Yeah.
Like it was me, like the Taylor Swift song, like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem. Very humbling to say, but I can say it now because it changed. It changed my life. We talk about it. It's been life-changing for me personally. And then I thought to myself, I was flying back for the 4th session. I was like, I'm in supported dentistry. Like, why aren't we doing this for our doctors? Yeah. I didn't realize how much it cost. But
always a barrier.
But I finished it and I was just on a mission to being like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is how we're supposed to be developing doctors, helping support them beyond the chair, because personal and professional development have to intertwine in order for you to not feel burned out from both sides.
So you come back from the course. It's not necessarily an immediate impulse to start that course and create a similar leadership curriculum for your dentist. What caused you to say, actually, I should do this? And where did you start?
I mean, it kind of was immediate in my personal practice.
Okay.
So I came back, I told the team, we're going to slow down. We're going to be doing things differently now. I realized that part of the challenge was a little bit of me being inconsistent, coming in and disruptive and not letting them have their structure.
Yeah.
And both of them looked at me and I said, are you guys in? And they both hesitantly said yes. And you wouldn't know.
That's a much friendlier remembering of it. If we're, look, we haven't gotten everything right, for sure. I think we were far more hesitant to the idea.
Oh, you were hesitant when I brought it to you.
She worked for months to put together this pitch that she was going to come make.
I had to make a business plan
to our executive team on why we should invest in this. Look, you're talking about late 22, early 23.
Production's down.
Tough time in dentistry.
Yeah.
Margins are compressed.
Yep.
We're not exactly swimming in cash.
Right.
And this idea of, no, this is a big investment and we should definitely do it, even though it wasn't kind of on our priority list,
right.
For the year. And so, Matt and I probably were the ones that were behind on seeing the value in this, honestly. And I think Layla was a champion through that of,
sure.
I mean, I got
going to give up
vendor relationship. I had to like truly do a business within the business. So I had to build a leadership program without a yes yet. Mm-hmm. And so I went out with vendors. So what I did was I realized that they would ask for an ROI and I was the only case study. So my case acceptance from 2021 to 2023 went from 22%, which I was appalled when they told me, shocked, offended, got angry. Because I was
at yourself.
No, I was mad at them. I was mad at Michael. Michael was like, Layla, did you know this? I'm like, you're lying. He's like, the data shows. And I'm like, I don't like data. So I went from 22% to 30% to almost 40%. And I was like, it does work. I didn't change anything about how I diagnosed. I just was more kind instead of nice to my patients. Mm-hmm. I was clear on the healthcare professional I wanted to be proactive in their care. And then I reached out to vendors and I said, I need 18 months or potentially 3 years of a partnership. Here's what I could provide for you.
Yep.
Can you help offset some of this cost? And I got people to say yes. So I got the vendors, I wrote the numbers out, I have a business coach, and I put this pitch together. And I'll tell this funny story because I think you remember it, but we were doing dinner one time. He's seen how hard I worked on this. And it was the middle of November, and I think I have a green light. And we're doing dinner, and I'm like, this is what we're doing. And he looks over at me and he goes, you know, you don't have the green light yet, right? I think my heart broke. I got a little crushed, but this version of me was not going to take, CEO David to David Lohmann, my husband. And I was like, oh, okay, help me understand what we need to do. And he's like, well, you need to pitch it to us and show us all the things. And I went from there. I booked it within 2 weeks. I found a time, and it was probably the hardest meeting I've ever had in my life. But I truly believe this is where we should go. This is what leadership and development should be. And like you said, I mean, they still were really hesitant.
Yeah.
There was a couple of times where he said, you know how much time we're putting in this? And I was like, I know. I think it's going to pay off.
So an interesting, and connecting the two conversations. One is, as a dentist, you got new information on your actual case acceptance rate.
Yeah.
So 22%, and it's really I think this quote that we've actually, in a couple of our conversations we've had, which is making the invisible visible.
Yeah.
And giving dentists the data they need to actually become not just great clinicians, but also business oriented and business minded.
Yeah.
How much of the turnaround was driven by simply just having access to the data and understanding, by having a lower treatment acceptance rate, I'm actually missing out on opportunities to improve my patient population, versus just saying 22% and having a mindset shift? Like how would you attribute the mindset shift versus actually just seeing the data and saying, I need to actually do a better job treating patients?
They have to go hand in hand,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a great question, but I don't think one drives success without the other.
Yeah.
Look, I think we have a lot of really well-intentioned doctors, both in Apex and the profession and everything, that want to do right by their patient. But it's really hard to know. I mean, you go and talk with any practice owner, kind of that traditional private practice, talk with their team of what's your treatment acceptance, and they will tell you almost 100%.
Yeah.
Our patients love us, and when we diagnose treatment, they accept. I think without exception, they are probably overstating it by 3x.
Yeah, because the national average is 46.
Right.
Most of the time when we put data in front of doctors, it is eye-opening. It's not meant to be critical. It's
Right.
meant to inform.
Right.
How can you make change? How can you achieve your patient promise, your objective, if you're not truly aware of how you're doing? And so, but at the same time, I put that in front of a doctor who doesn't have that mindset shift
Right.
of, look, I want to grow personally and professionally. I want to do better for my patients. The data's the data.
The data's wrong. Well, the data's wrong. You think the data's wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You probably just feel personally like can't be right.
Right. Well, and then
that is,
yeah.
I would say that is the overwhelmingly most common reaction
Right.
of data's wrong. And we go, well, look, data's data. I mean, it's not my data. It's your data. It's
Right.
straight out of the practice management system. But it can inform. Look, okay, if this is, then let's dig in to where in the process is it breaking down?
Right.
It may not be you, but where in the process is it breaking down? Is it a financing solution issue
Right.
with the patient base? Is it a treatment presentation issue? So it doesn't have to be personal, but we can't start to improve and ultimately get our patients the care they need if we don't understand what the actual results are.
Right.
So you talk about bringing, and I'm going to go back to the Catalyst program. So you get these vendors, and there is this idea that vendors are in it just to sell.
Right.
How did you go about taking that concept of supported dentistry and expanding it to your vendor ecosystem?
So during my conversations when I was trying to get that support, I started realizing that you can't do dentistry without partnerships, which is vendors, it's products.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deliver a crown without my partnership with a lab. I can't deliver a restorative without a high quality product. You cannot do dentistry without them. So instead of Heismaning the vendors, I really started to localize, like, who are we spending money with? Are they high quality products? are they willing to support beyond the chair? And ultimately, I thought to myself, if we could get partnerships and say they are our partners to deliver on that outstanding patient experience, because if you use their workflow, if you do instructions for use, you use one product as tested by the vendor instead of hodgepodging things,
Right.
you actually give that patient ultimately the best experience because you reduce sensitivity, you reduce remakes, you reduce the variables where damaging, not necessarily damaging, you reduce the variables of inconsistency to patients. But typically doctors will be like, I'm going to go get a curing light from eBay. I'm going to go get this. And, we're trying to do it. And I was like, well, supported dentistry, we get competitive pricing at our scale. We could get it for almost the same price as what this person's getting it. Right. So I stopped thinking of them as vendor services. And I thought, they're just as much as a partner as Apex is for supporting business.
Right.
I think it's also important for us to be honest. Look, if we're trying to grow a business,
right,
our vendors are too. And,
they're trying to sell.
That's okay. We've got to find a mutually beneficial partnership.
Right.
And so I think Layla did a really good job of, look, we're not going to start with who will support us. Let's start with who are we using that we're really happy with today.
Yep.
Products, labs, technology, that we would love to grow the relationship with, and go and make that pitch. Look, come support our initiatives. And through that, we're going to get you introduced to more of our doctors, more of our practices, more FaceTime that, you will have to work really hard to get. Otherwise, this is a highly fragmented industry, right?
Yeah. And like thoughtful time with them.
And that resonates. Look, she started with her question of, she knew what they were going to ask, which is, what's my return? That's what that's what my boss's boss is going to ask. And she always starts those conversations with, what does success look like for you? At the end of 12 months, when we look back, what do you need to say this was successful or not?
Right.
And I think if we can work towards a mutually beneficial partnership, it's been really successful for us. It's been really successful for a lot of our vendors who have, grown our partnership, but in turn, it gets better products, better technology, better labs in the hands of our doctors.
Right.
And, that's the ultimate goal, right?
It aligns with our mission of serving others and changing lives. And ultimately it's the patient, but it's also the people who support the patient. And there's also the people who also support delivery of that care beyond the patient. And that includes everybody. And I truly mean, like, it's no longer selling. I don't have to convince you. I don't have to persuade you. I'm actually being very transparent about what we're doing because I care about you. And that's kind of where that proactive playbook came about. And I know that we are going to talk about that in a little bit later, but people get really frustrated with doctors diagnosing completely different things. Yeah. You have one x-ray and you will get 17 opinions on it. Right. And different opinions, 17 different opinions. The part that I loved about proactive care was there's nothing different if you protect the teeth when they're healthy. And there's nothing different when you protect the gums when they're healthy and catching them before they get to the disease.
Or an issue.
Yeah. Well, to the disease state. So that's where the proactive patient care model came. Was I was using AI, I was using dental health scans, I was using my new skill sets to be an effective communicator, both personally and professionally, and patients accepted the care because it was so honest about helping them stay healthy long-term.
Yep. And the things that I pulled out of there, which I think are important because it drives both clinical outcomes and financial outcomes, are you're standardizing care at patient appointment.
Yeah.
And you're removing variance in all of the workflows. So you can actually, in the data, isolate where things go wrong versus trying to like blindly figure out, well, that's your data, not my data. It's actually, we've standardized the workflow. I can now understand at different points of care where there may be opportunities to improve.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you think about Catalyst, large investment, obviously we talked about the ROI or the outcomes, but how did you come to the decision? Like walk me through uncertain decision.
That'd be you. I was
real
like,
champion.
We got to do this.
Real champion, but uncertain financial return.
Yeah, I think twofold. One, Layla and Dr. were very persuasive. You've probably interacted with her enough to know that she cares deeply about this industry, about this space, about what we're building. I said from the beginning, we never set out to be the biggest group. We always wanted to be the highest quality. Mm-hmm. And there's these points in that evolution that come up and you go, how can we say no to this and stick to that being the ultimate goal for this business? And so that was one part of it. I think it also aligned, if we're being honest, with it's a few years post-COVID. There's a big generational shift happening in this industry. That older generation of doctor is either moving towards or into retirement. We have this wave of newer, younger doctors coming into Apex, and we're going, look, these are great people. They want to be great clinicians, great leaders in their practices. But right now, as an organization, we don't have a program or tools to help them get there.
Right.
This was a lot of, look, we can market for you and give you a patient base and surround you with a great team and go do it. And these doctors 2, 3, 4, 5 years out of school are going, yeah, I want that too, but I don't know how to take that next step.
Right.
And so I think it aligned with timing really well, but I think having a really strong advocate internally for, let's do one cohort and let's see.
Yeah. I was like, let's just try one.
And the most amazing thing about this is the doctors who go through this invest some of their own money in their development. That's important to who we are. Initially it was necessary. We even went back this year with the newest cohort and said, look, financially, we don't really need that. Is that a barrier to getting certain doctors into the program? I think we felt very strongly that it was less about the dollars, but it was about having skin in the game.
Right.
If I am going to put some of my own money, I'm going to be more committed. I'm going to, when I show up to these, I'm going to pay attention.
Yeah.
I'm going to be present.
Right.
I'm going to work on my own development, build relationships. I'm going to do all the things that, we as a team think are really important for doctors to get true buy-in as they go through this process. And so it's huge. I mean, these doctors go through the first cohort. I'll share the numbers. They increased, that first cohort of doctors who went through this program increased their income. Let's start there, because that's ultimately what drives return on their investment. They increased their income on average $51,000 that first year.
Wow.
Across the cohort. So yes, it ended up being great for us as a business.
I showed the ROI.
You want to go back to doctor retention. I mean, these people just took an entire step in their growth.
Of course.
They had the personal and professional growth, but they're seeing the financial growth and really starting to see a pathway towards, look, I've got the ownership here. I've got the voice here.
I understand
I've got
the business.
the leadership. I've been invested in. I've invested in myself. And also, I'm doing really well for myself right now. I'm supporting my family. I'm starting to move towards that ultimate lifestyle that I envisioned. And that's a really strong retention mechanism.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Catalyst has become a real system for doctor retention. Tell me about the other systems, right? You've scaled from 0 to over 70 practices now. What broke?
Lots of stuff along the way. Some of that, I think the first was probably that we didn't need to be on consolidated practice management systems. We'll just solve it with technology on the back end. And yeah, we could pull data out, but it wasn't consistent data.
Okay.
And so in 2022, 2023, we went through a big push, consolidated all practices onto a single practice management system.
And that was challenging.
A challenge. I mean, that's a big technology push in an industry that historically hasn't been really technology forward.
Right.
And so change is always hard. Technology change on people is challenging. And we had some missteps. I hand it to our doctors, our office managers, our teams broadly, had a great attitude through that, powered through it, came out in probably 23 into 24. And I think we just had so much better insight across the business to help them drive towards the goals that they were setting for their individual practice. We now have better data, better insight into your practice to contribute day to day. We had some development pathways that broke or that didn't exist that we figured out pretty quickly needed to be put in place. We made some, as any business scaling does, we made some mishires, I would say, along the way, where you put maybe the right people in the wrong place, or the wrong people or the right people at the wrong time.
Right.
And that's challenging, right? 'Cause especially if that's somebody who's been in the organization and you move them to a different role, you've taken them out of a position they were very successful in and given them this opportunity that perhaps we as a leadership team misidentified what was right for them.
Mhm.
And that's really tough to
Hard.
kind of look back and go, man, this is a person you need in the organization, but we've made this change and it's hard to go back. So I don't know, there's been a lot of, I mean, you're in a rapidly growing business as well. You know that it's tough to grow without breaking some things along the way. And I think if you don't have a culture that's okay with that, that is willing to push it as far as you can go, but also quickly identify and make a change if you've gone the wrong route.
We're really good at redirection. I mean, we accept, yeah, like we accept that we're doing the right thing and maybe this wasn't the right way, and let's pivot instead of going down. And we rely heavily on each other to have those conversations, and sometimes they're hard conversations.
As you think about the next couple of years, you've grown it tremendously. What's next?
Yeah, growth. We're pretty unapologetic about that. Look, we are not the fastest growing group in America. I go back to that's never been the goal, but growth has always been central to who we are. It is central to our doctor culture. I've used this phrase over and over again, but it's really important. We are really attracted to doctors with a growth mindset, personal, professional, financial growth.
Mhm.
Those doctors, I think, find tremendous value in us as an organization and the places we are unique. But as a overall organization, that growth has allowed us to attract talent into the company that might otherwise be in much larger businesses, but are really excited about this entrepreneurial feel, this growth culture that, look, where we are today is not where we're going to be in 12 months, and
Right.
it's certainly not where we're going to be in 36 months. So we're big believers in this is an industry that continues to change. That can take different pathways, but it's going to continue to change, and we want to be at the front end of that. We want to continue growing around great people, great practices, but we want to keep this focus on being the highest quality organization in our space, one that truly values people, truly values patient care, patient relationships, but one who is, I think, pushing the boundaries of what dentistry should be in terms of technology, first and foremost, people development, and continuing to at least try to think outside the box.
And what I'm doing is I want the Catalyst program to be mini programs for all of our healthcare professionals. I use that term loosely because I think everyone in our practice is a professional. There's the administrative professionals, there's the clinical professionals, and I want confidence in everybody's role so they have career development opportunities within our organization. So what we're working on is to translate Catalyst to mini Catalyst launches for RDAs, administrative professionals, our healthcare hygienists. We want them to all be thinking about, I use this term primary care provider of the oral cavity because they teach you to be restorative doctors. You have to reframe an identity shift to being a proactive healthcare professional. It's a very tough transition. They traditionally come in, broken tooth, you fix it, you're good. They go get their teeth clean and they're gone. And with the oral systemic connection, my people promise and my patient promise is to continue to drive people to being prevention is the best cure. We partner with high quality labs and high quality products to restore teeth when that has happened after I've educated and prevented, and now I'm a restorative doctor. So that's my 2 to 3 year plan, is getting our RDAs, our administrative professionals, everybody to be able to have that aha moment if they want it. It's been very hard because I want them to want it.
And I imagine, much like Catalyst for your dental professionals or your doctor professionals, retention will be a core outcome there.
Yeah.
Do you envision it will have the same sort of impact on both retention and ROI for hygiene or your assistants?
I mean, I already know it does on my practice.
I think talent is the single biggest arms race in dentistry right now. Really good people aren't moving. And so when you have them, and unless there is a reason for them to leave. And so that's doctors, that's hygienists, it's RDAs, it's front desk, it's office managers. for us, when you have great people, if you can't give them a development pathway, look, even within a larger organization, dentistry is still practiced in a very small box. It's, the four walls of a dental practice are 1,500 to 4,500 square feet on it, something like that. It's a relatively small team without some growth pathways, whether that's growth in your particular role. We don't want to just have every dental assistant think that, well, in order for me to progress financially and professionally, I'm ultimately going to need to move, away from chair side to the front. And then
office manager.
We really do want to do career way pathing within the individual role. How do we keep a fantastic dental assistant chair side for the next 30 years, but give him or her all the opportunity to continue to increase financially, responsibility-wise, give them leadership opportunities. And I think largely that hasn't and maybe even still doesn't exist in dentistry. So it's a big focus of what Layla's working on, our broader clinical team is working on. But I think that the nucleus of that initiative is, how do we retain great people?
Yeah.
Right.
It will be the differentiator. Yes, it probably starts with dentists as the primary kind of producers in a practice.
Right.
It's where you see groups and practices go wrong most obviously. But even if you get that right, no dentist wants to stick around with a revolving door of their staff.
Right.
Right.
And so, we've got to get it right. But I think it will be the single biggest differentiator in success among groups like Apex as we look into the future is, can you attract and retain talent?
Well, and I talked to my friend about it. It's not the organization's job to make you happy. You have to find that fulfillment, yourself. Happiness is a choice, but it is our job and responsibility to provide those supported pathways as that partnership if you can't find it elsewhere. Like, that's why it's supported dentistry. So I find it very valuable that's you working with us. We want that professional development, which will translate to personally, and hopefully that will be able to help you choose that happiness.
And when David, you just mentioned it, but also Layla, you as well. A core reason for staff leaving is burnout.
Yeah.
There's a lot of admin work to be done. And especially in a high growth industry or high growth company, that admin work can really start to overwhelm and just become the actual a large portion of time where people are spending their time. When you think about growth, right underneath that is technology. Technology often helps eliminate some of the admin burden. Where are the areas of technology that you're focused on over the next couple of years?
Yeah.
There's a number of places. I think there's some really exciting developments in clinical AI that have come in and continue to improve.
And I love it.
I think that is, look, dentistry from a technology perspective is 10 or 15 years behind the physician side of medicine in many ways. I don't think that's a secret. But I do think that that curve is steepening quickly. And so there's some really exciting things there. Look, technology, you mentioned, it can alleviate burden. If done improperly, it can create burden. And I think that is a place that we may have misstepped in the past. I'm sure we've got team members that would say, look, there's a lot of technology here. We've got a lot of systems. We've got a lot of this. And continuing to be conscious of if and where, how and where we use technology, but consolidating kind of those platforms over time. We invest heavily here. We build a lot of it ourselves. We've got a team of engineers that build a lot of our own technology. It's less about, that we think we can build a better mousetrap, but it's more about having control over what we build and how it particularly functions for our practices or practice model. And so we think there's a lot of exciting things that are coming on the admin side. I mean, obviously, anything around RCM, insurance verification, I mean, you'd be a saint if you could truly solve that problem today. And there are some third-party, groups out there that are doing some really cool things there. We continue to evaluate whether that's a build it or buy it decision, but we know that's a place that we have to continue to evolve and give our team the best resources to be as efficient and, I guess, as little burden as possible in their role. Because, man, sit at a front desk for an hour.
Hard job.
Patient check-in, patient check-out, phones are ringing, insurance,
Treatment coordinator.
You can't verify that insurance electronically, so I have to call and I'm waiting online. There is so much going on and it's not decreasing, right? It's well now, okay, well,
here's another
some patients want to interact with via text or,
Only
so
email.
it's just more. And I think finding technology solutions that eliminate that or quiet some of the noise there will be really key to our success as well.
I think clinically it's been a game changer. I tell our doctors, because some people get frustrated about technology, I would say most of our doctors originally are hesitant. I was. When I first started using AI in 2022, I hated it for the first 3 months. I was like, this is crap. I've learned how to do the art of gray. I could talk about gray all day with my patients. And now I tell my doctors, some get frustrated because they drill into a tooth only solely looking at AI. I'm like, well, that's actually not what AI is.
Right.
AI, you're supposed to turn it off. You're supposed to double check it. It's just a second opinion. It's something to catch your eye for early detection. It can detect things 800 times more shades of gray than your naked eye. So when people say they don't trust and believe it, it's a fact. Your eyes can only see 30 to 50 shades. I mean, it's a fact.
There are tremendous opportunities here, but I think the thing that we miss on technology a lot is the patient marketing component of it as well. And it's less in true traditional marketing. A perfect example, my mother moved to Dallas to be closer to us a couple years ago. And for the first time, she'd been in a relatively small town for years with a private practice dentist. Sure, a great guy, great dentist, but she went into Layla's practice for the first time. And I saw her that evening and she goes, it's unbelievable. They took this scan of my whole head and then they scanned my mouth. Well, she had a CBCT and a digital scan,
scan.
With an intraoral scanner, and she was blown away. And she called her longtime partner, who still lives in that town, and said, "You've got to find a new dentist. The technology they're using is it." And it was just a perfect example of, look, we owe this to our patients. Sure. And two, you want to talk about the most effective patient acquisition, model. It is referral.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if we come in and we give that patient a better experience, they're far more likely to go to their friends and go, you've got to go see my dentist.
And family.
He or she has great technology. It's a beautiful facility. The team's so nice. It's all those things that I think just add to that outstanding patient experience that differentiates your practice in a really competitive environment.
It's not going away. So it is going to be the standard of care where patients want to be involved in their care, shared decision-making, shared accountability. And I think that will also reduce the burnout for teams instead of persuading and convincing patients of their disease states. It's your condition. Here's how we're going to do it, Mrs. Jones. And here's the prescribed care with the trusted resources. Done. She says yes.
Makes sense.
That used to take me like 5 hours to get down. No, like 30 minutes.
Layla, David, this has been incredible. If someone wants to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website. It's apexdp.com. There's a contact form there. It'll make its way to us. Please do reach out. We always love to talk with doctors, especially who are thinking about options, thinking about what partnership might look like. And we're always happy to have those conversations. But like I said, we always look for great people too. So somebody's listening to this that might be looking for a new opportunity, please do reach out.
I always give my cell phone. And everyone hates it. It's 405-414-1083. You know how many people have used it? Like 5. But you know what? It's the part is that we want people to know there's access to us. And it's you who ultimately, like, I don't compete to be the best dentist against anybody else. I compete to the best version of myself every single day, which then ultimately helps other people see and mirror that. So use it. We really want to help you guys give that patient experience. And thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining. I'm Joe Lynch, head of go-to-market at Dandy. You can find us at meetdandy.com, and you can find more episodes of The Margin Line wherever you get your podcasts.